Hey guys, Boston Ramos and the Miami Dolphins squeaked out a win today against the Jacksonville Jaguars, winning 20-17. Man, it was quite the game. Not too many, it wasn't crazy offensive. It was more of a defensive battle, but also it was a matchup of week one, getting kinks out of both offenses and defenses. Both teams, deservingly so, had their moments of mishaps slash, having great success. So that's my big takeaway from this game. I want to go quickly over what my keys to victory were. It was one, limit Trevor Lawrence to under 250 yards. They did that. Trevor Lawrence had 162 yards. ETN wasn't even the leading rusher for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was Tank Bigsby, which completely out of left field. If you would have told me heading into this matchup that Tank Bigsby would have been the leading rusher for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would have told you you're freaking crazy. But he was. He had 12 carries for 73 total yards. ETN had 12 carries for 44 yards. So big game out of Tank Bigsby. Last year I was big on him in terms of fantasy and heading into the season, and it did not work out well for me. But Tank Bigsby seeming like a reasonable fantasy pickup if you really need a running back. So look out for that. HN, everything that we imagined him and more. He looks like he's a lead back. He had 10 carries today for 24 yards, and he also had a couple catches, 7 catches for 76 yards. So HN, really big time plays out of him. But yeah, keys to victory was Trevor Lawrence under 250 passing yards. Did that. Limit ETN. Did that. But Tank Bigsby filled in his role. And then last but not least, protect Tua. There were 3 sacks on Tua. The offense was lackluster. The offense looked like it was stuck in the mud. There were plenty of plays that it was just like, why are we dropping screen passes? What are we doing, guys? Those quick routes that this offense likes to do. It wasn't great. But aside from the fact Dolphins won 20-17, the performance overall was very dramatic. Winning in a last-second field goal was pretty good to see, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. Without further ado, we're gonna get into the preview. The post-game review. Yeah, it was a tough win for the Miami Dolphins. They gutted it out. They got the win. We're gonna go over some team stats really quick. It just didn't look too great for the Dolphins. Dolphins had 18 first downs to Jaguars 17. Let's see what else we can talk about. Third down efficiency, Dolphins were 8 of 16. Jaguars were 2 of 10. Fourth down efficiency, Jaguars were 0 for 1. Dolphins were 0 for 2. Total yards of offense, Dolphins had 400 yards. Jaguars had 267. Let's see what else is big time that we can talk about. The Dolphins forced a turnover, which we will talk about in a second when we look at the stats. When we look at the highlight, which I'm about to do in a second. Time of possession, 33 minutes and 10 seconds. Jaguars, 26 minutes and 50 seconds. So the Dolphins definitely made their presence felt, but it wasn't to the degree that I would have liked. But at the end of the day, I think they have some working to do. It's week one. Let's not, be crazy about what's going on here in Miami. But it's week one. What can you do? All right, let's get into these highlights. Pretty early on in the game here, and Trevor Lawrence has a big run for a first down. That helped keep the chains moving and getting them in position to score a touchdown, which Etienne gladly got in to do so. But how about this catch from Christian Kirk? I want to say Christian Kirk. But that would lead to this Brian Thomas touchdown. Just barely staying in bounds. We're going to get a second look. 1 foot down, 2 feet down. Yeah, it was just a tough look there. HN, I mean, he's everything that has been promoted and more. But making a guy miss there and picking up some yardage. We also got Tua on the run here. This is something that we've been talking about this offseason, that Tua's been trying to be more mobile, try to extend plays with his legs. And yeah, that's one of these prime examples there. It led to this nice pass to Jalen Waddle. The ball kept on moving. We have HN here once again, barely getting close to the first down. It's a little tough spot. But the Dolphins were moving here. Tyreek right here gets the first down, trying to get more yardage. Unfortunately, steps out of bounds before he can cross the goal line. But no fear, HN is here. But he did not cross the goal line on that one. It was a close call, under review. They redeemed him short. So next play, HN finally gets in the end zone. Deservedly so. If you get right there and it doesn't happen for you, it's a tough spot, and you just gotta do it. You just gotta get in there. But this Tua right here, uncorking a deep bomb to Jalen Waddle, completely flipping the field, helping set up this upcoming drive. But something so minor as a shoestring tackle stunts the drive. It's unfortunate. But we were talking about Tank Bigsby earlier. I mean, he was running with a purpose, and kudos to him. I like to see guys that, like, I'm kind of high on, have some type of development. But Gabe Davis getting a big catch here. This was a killer of a penalty. The face mask here by Jordan Poyer on, I want to say, Devin Duvernay, but fortunately, Javon Holland came through in the clutch and forced a fumble, and Kader Kohu is the one who comes out on top of it. But yeah, this Dolphins team, man. Tyreek Hill speeding on and off the field, man. An 80-yard touchdown by Tyreek Hill. And guys, you're gonna see multiple angles, all the angles. It's glorious. I love seeing Tyreek getting out in open field, makes a defender miss a tackle, and eases his way into the end zone. We're gonna see right here, real close to the boundary, just keeps the feet in bounds. I think this was a big deciding factor in this game. This was very crucial because, like I said, this offense was stuck in the mud. It wasn't great, but how about a great tackle here by David Long Jr., splitting the offensive lineman. And late into the game, Dolphins finally get their first sack on Trevor Lawrence. Emmanuel Ogbah. It's good to see him back in the 91. It was weird seeing him. I think it was in 51 or whatever what number he was rocking during the preseason. But hey, Jalen Phillips is back, baby. First game of the season, and he's already getting a sack. Love to see that out of him. He's hype. He knows what time it is. Oh man. But this offense, honestly, today was lackluster. A lot of screen plays, a lot of minor things that just trying to make the playmakers make the plays. But at the end of the day, Dolphins sealed it off with the field goal here in the final moments of the game. And shout out to Jason Sanders. Didn't lose faith. He had missed a field goal earlier in the second half after Dolphins had great field position, and then followed it up with a field goal to close out the game. So shout out Jason Sanders. But yeah, I mean, it was a tough, gutting win for the Miami Dolphins. It could have gone very bad very fast. Luckily, it did not. So that's a big takeaway. But week 1, 1-0 at home. They faced a formidable opponent in the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they came out on top, regardless of how it came about. I didn't go over this at all, but Tyreek Hill got arrested, detained before the game. It's a tough look for him there. Yeah, I don't know how I truly feel about it. It's very, upsetting to see, but, we don't know the full details. But he was detained and released after a traffic violation. But, the big thing to take away from this is whether or not Tyreek Hill was in the wrong or not. It's no one's above the law. That's like my big takeaway from this. Aside from that, is just it's very unfortunate. It's a tough position to be in if you're one of the officers and you're pulling over. For example, let's just say this is what happened. Tyreek Hill speeding on his way into Hard Rock Stadium. Those are predicaments that these officers are not necessarily prepped on. This like, oh, Tyreek Hill's late. Let's just let him pass by. But like, I don't know we don't have the full details at this moment. But got released and came back and ended up suiting up and playing for the Dolphins today. And his presence was felt. We'll go over his stats in a second, but he had a pretty good day for himself. Really quick, let's go over the stats. We have Trevor Lawrence for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He went 12 of 21, 162 yards, 1 touchdown, and he was sacked 3 times for a loss of 23 yards. We also have Tua going 23 of 37, 338 total yards, 1 touchdown, sacked 3 times for a loss of 19 yards. We talked about Tanks Bigsby. He led the Jaguars in rushing, 12 carries, 73 yards, longest of 26. ETN had 12 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown, longest of 11. For the Miami Dolphins, Jeff Wilson Jr. had 5 carries for 26 yards. He led the Dolphins in rushing, surprisingly so. Achan's presence was more felt in the passing game. We'll talk about that in a second. But 5 carries for 26 yards, longest of 14. Achan 10 carries, 24 total yards, and 1 touchdown, longest of 9. Tua had that big carry that we mentioned in the highlight for 11 yards. And Raheem Mostert 6 carries for 9 yards. It sucked. It's kind of seeing, Raheem Mostert early on in this game kind of being phased out of the starting offense. I don't truly know how I feel about it, but it was definitely a bit jarring because I was hoping, they extended him this offseason. They brought him back this offseason and gave him, I want to say, a 3-year contract. And it kind of sucked seeing his contribution to this offense be limited. But this was a really weird game. It's a week 1 game. I think the Dolphins are still trying to establish their identity, but they definitely identified it in the passing game. We'll get to that in a second. But Gabe Davis led the Jaguars in receiving yards, 3 receptions for 62 total yards, longest of 22. Brian Thomas Jr., 4 receptions, 47 total yards, 1 touchdown. Pretty good debut for the rookie there. And then Christian Kirk, 1 reception for 30 yards. So, the defense made it tough for Trevor Lawrence to make a lot of these completions, but they really tried running the ball. They had 26 carries and then I want to say 12 receptions off of 21 attempts. So not the best day in the office for the Jacksonville Jaguars receiving corps. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill though. Back to Tyreek, he had 7 receptions, 130 yards. He had a long of 80, which was that touchdown play. But off of 12 targets, it wasn't the best day receiving for him. But I could just imagine, I wouldn't know how I would feel and how I would play after getting detained trying to go to the field and getting ready to play. But Jalen Waddle surpassed 100 yards, so he had 5 receptions for 109 yards. He had that big reception that I showed earlier in the highlight for 63 total yards. How about Achan? 7 receptions, 76 total yards. 39 was his longest reception. Everyone else, aside from Raheem Mostert, had 10 or less yards. Let's talk about fumbles. Parker Washington had a fumble, but they were able to recover it. But ETN had that fumble, and it was the one that Javon Holland forced, and Kader who recovered. So shout out to those guys getting on top of the ball. Foyose Oluokun was the leading tackler for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 11 total tackles, 8 solo. He had 1 tackle for a loss and 1 pass deflection. After that was Devin Lloyd, 9 total tackles, 7 solo. And same with Antonio Johnson, 9 total, 5 solo. All these guys had a tackle for a loss. And then let's talk about Ronald Darby. He had a tackle for a loss and a pass deflection. Trayvon Walker had a tackle for a loss and 2 sacks. Big day for him on the defensive side. Let's see, we have Tyson Campbell with a tackle for a loss, Josh Hines Allen with a pass deflection. That one was interesting to see in person. Eric Armstead had a sack and a tackle for a loss and a QB hit. And Davon Hamilton had a tackle for the loss. And last but not least, Roy Robertson Harris had a QB hit. And then last but not least, Darnell Savage had 2 pass deflections. For the Miami Dolphins, David Long Jr. had 8 total tackles, 7 solo. He led the team in tackling. But shortly behind them was Jordan Poyer, 6 total tackles, 4 solo. Same with Kendall Fuller, literally the same exact line. Let's talk about Emmanuel Ogbah, had a sack and a tackle for a loss and 2 QB hits. Calais Campbell had a sack, tackle for a loss, and a QB hit. Javon Holland had a pass deflection and a forced fumble. Jalen Phillips had a sack, tackle for a loss, QB hit. And Quentin Bell had a tackle for a loss. No interceptions on either side here. And in terms of kick returns, Parker Washington had 2 returns for 44 total yards. Punt returns, Devin Duvernay had 1 return for 3 yards. Tyreek had a return for 1 return for 11 yards, and Braxton Burrows had 2 returns for 2 total yards. Kicking, Cam Little had a 1 for 1 on field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. Jay Sanders went 2 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points. Yeah, that missed field goal was not good for Jason Sanders, but he redeemed himself. What can you do? And then we have Logan Cook had 6 total punts for 311 yards, and Jake Bailey went 4 of 198, 3 were which in the 20, longest of 57. All in all, not the worst game for the Miami Dolphins, but not the best. It was very underwhelming. It was very frustrating to see them be so lackluster out the gate. That first game last year against the Los Angeles Chargers, Dolphins are rolling. It was a 30-30 something game, and Dolphins fortunately came out on top on that one. Close game to kick off the season here. Came out on top against a formidable opponent in the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have similar aspirations to the Miami Dolphins, so it was great to see them get a win here. But moving forward, you definitely want to see more out of this Dolphins team. But week 1, some growing pains, some kinks getting ironed out. Tyreek Hill getting arrested before the game or detained before the game. So a lot going on there. But fortunately, Dolphins were able to come out on top, and they move on to next week, which is Thursday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, and that's not an easy matchup. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough one. But Thursday Night Football, prime, and Buffalo Bills. It's gonna be a tough one. But yeah, Dolphins came out on top here. They did pretty much all I said, except for really protecting Tua. Limit Trevor Lawrence, limit Travis Etienne. But Tanks Bigsby filled in that role for Travis Etienne. But they didn't protect Tua all too well. But a few of those sacks were not really the offensive line's fault. But Tua holding onto the ball a little bit too much, but it happens. It's football. You want to let your plays develop and get your guys open deep down the field, which is a big facet of this Miami Dolphins offense. But all in all, not a horrible matchup, and glad to see the Dolphins came out on top, even with a final second field goal. Very stressful, but they did it. Vlog will be coming out soon from the game, and let's see what comes of it. It was a crazy day, to say the least. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.